Welcome to the ANEW Body Insight podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogrammed Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. And Chantal Donnelly, physical therapist and author of Settled, How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. We follow our guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Welcome back to the ANEW Body Insight podcast. We are back for the second half of our interview with storyteller and humanitarian Shanna Forrestall. She gave us some background about some harrowing things that she went through and how she emerged from that and her work in the entertainment industry to become this prolific storyteller and humanitarian. We cannot wait to hear and learn more. Welcome back, Shanna.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shanna, we were amazed at everything that you went through that you were talking about in the first episode. And for those who haven't heard the first episode, I highly recommend going back and listening. Yes. You've been through so much, and yet we're so clear in your path coming out of all of this trauma. Now, there was one trauma we didn't talk about, which apparently you were in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit. Having experienced Hurricane Katrina firsthand, how has this shaped your approach to volunteer work and your efforts to document stories of disaster survivors and relief workers?
Well, here's what's interesting. I wasn't actually in New Orleans when it happened. I was living outside, so I was actually okay. But what I did was I went and worked frontline relief as soon as I could, because I had already done, all my life I've been doing humanitarian aid and all these things, but obviously Katrina was a whole nother animal. So I was literally in front of National Guard. I don't know why they put us in front, because we were just volunteers, but I was literally at 5 days out when they started airlifting people out. I was literally frontline taking people off the airplane and moving them into the airport and stuff. And then I worked for 3 months after with shelters and girls programs, displaced girls programs and all kinds of things. But that started, that Katrina, because it was home, right, really, really solidified my desire at the time to work with post-disaster, like post-natural disaster. So after that, I ended up working a lot of fires. I ended up working a lot of floods. So many years later, when I was already living in LA, my hometown flooded, a drastic, dramatic flood that nobody national really heard about. And it was, our whole town went down. And I would fly back every week for a while or every month and just like raise money and do things. But I think because of my life and what I've been through, I have such an empathy for people who are going through trauma. And somehow I have a sense of just how to hold space maybe. And like, I care. And I know that when you're going through something, the first person to get to you, if they can handle that moment and they can hold space for you, it's really, really important. And so Katrina, being as close as it was, having relatives affected, friends affected, and being within, an hour driving distance, I was there. And that lit the fire that led to the rest of it. And then doing the work is when I started to realize that stories needed to be told. Victim stories, one, I would tell victim stories, but I also spent a lot of time interviewing people who did post relief, because I thought that data was important, like what worked, what didn't, what have you learned? I would interview pastors of churches who had taken in people and therapists. I interviewed a woman, incredible interview, who was doing EMDR right after the fires in California. They were offering free EMDR services. And I went and sat with her and I was like, tell me what you're doing. Tell me how it's working. Tell me why it's working. And tell me how we should be doing this everywhere else. Mm-hmm. So data got really important to me in doing the work through the years, because I was like, what can we learn? And here's what I've learned is like the national big organizations, they're going to do what they do, but there's a lot of inefficiency. And I've had to actually fight them on some things to protect people. So I don't trust them and I don't give my money to them. What I've learned is that the people within a 5 to 20 mile radius, the closest unaffected people, are going to be the best ones to get in and help with supplies, love, support. And I tell you what, Houston, when I worked Houston after Mitch, it was mothers. It was mothers in SUVs that I was working with who were in the back of trucks, and we were throwing mattresses and we were getting diaper orders and they were Amazoning them in. And like these women were fired. There's nothing like a group of women fired up after an event that understand what is happening. And so I've spent a lot of time
I can't agree with you more on that. Just a fun fact, I am the co-chair of the Disaster Response Network for my psychological association. So I actually can I know it's a passion of mine.
I have data you probably need.
Yeah. Well, after Katrina, that's what really inspired me, because I just remember sitting there feeling so helpless and so angry at the lack of response. And so I think it is absolutely essential. And I agree with you that, you know, being one of the first people there, it doesn't matter if you're with an organization or not, but if you can be one of the first people there, that's so important. And here's another fun fact for Los Angeles people. You can actually join the fire department in a program called CERT. And it's a community emergency response team. And I did the training for that, which was super fun because you get to learn how to make tourniquets and first aid and triage and all sorts of stuff. And then you can join their efforts as a volunteer. So I encourage people all the time to go out and find these volunteer efforts, especially for these times, because I think most people want to help. They just don't know how during that time. And if you can be somebody, you know, like we had an earthquake today, and I'm really hoping that everybody's okay after that. It wasn't a huge one, but being there to be able to help somebody through that is vital. Now, you also have gone to India and Europe through your work. Tell me about these projects. Do they have anything to do with the humanitarian efforts?
So in the beginning, they all did. The last few years, I've focused more on art and the power of using art. But before that, for years, I did humanitarian aid all over the world. So I've done everything. I've done a lot of art programs, but also feeding programs, medical programs. I just love helping people. And for a huge part of my life, from like early 20s to late 30s, I did a lot of that. And then it got to where I started focusing on my art career, started acting and doing those things. So then I would really just work like humanitarian aid stuff and then local agencies that needed help. But, you know, going back to something you said about preparation, you know, I think that's really important. And it's like, I think a lot of people don't realize, you know, you feel helpless sometimes, right? When something happens, but the more prepared we can be, the more you can activate when something goes down. So I recommend that too. I second you on that. Like whatever you can do to be aware of your community and what are the lines of communication and what can you learn and what can you contribute, you know, because so many things get missed in those moments. I mean, it's water, but then when they have water, then what's next? People don't think about it. And I've you know, sourced mosquito bans, and I had for years, I had relationships with companies I could just call because I had already dealt with them. They knew I was going to get it to the front lines if I had to hand carry it. And I would, you know, and I had companies they would drop ship me stuff as soon as disasters that they knew I was going, because we had an agreement, an alliance, and they trusted me because I gave them results. I gave them, you know, and there were things that people needed, like electrolytes and mosquito bans. And, you know, there are things in level 2 that happen in the 2 weeks after that nobody's covering those needs. So the more you can learn, like you're saying, and be prepared, you can be part of the solution.
Yeah. And here's the thing. If you guys, you know, just contact your local fire department, they may already have a program similar to that. And as a bonus, you get a hard hat, you get a go bag, you get a wrench, you get gloves, you get all this stuff.
A hard hat.
It's very cool. So
the accessories, it's all about the accessories.
My
husband had the same certification. So
and you get to meet firemen. So come on now.
I know.
It's a bonus all the way around.
That's a win. No, that's great. So the India and Europe and things like that, you know, I did a lot of work in those countries, but now it's turned to more of an art thing. And I'm dreaming about, you know, I'm writing hybrid scripts that will be shot partly in India. And part of my goal in being there, wanting to be there longer than a few weeks at a time, is that I want to do some training in the communities, like in some of these cities with children. I want to do art there. And I want my products to go there, like, because everybody has YouTube now. Everybody has a phone. And so the great thing about this digital work we're creating and you know, is that people can understand it. And stories are wonderful. They're learning English anyway. If not, they're trying. And also we do things in other languages times. And that's another thing I want to do is is some stuff that's in Hindi. I have Hindi all over my body. So there's a lot of things on my heart that still are to be yet developed in India and some other countries. So yes.
Wonderful. You're all over the place. And now you also have the Chattanooga Fashion Expo. Can you tell us what that is and how it came to be?
So I do so many things. So fashion, when I moved to Chattanooga, I noticed there was a gap in fashion. And I've been working with New Orleans Fashion Week for many years. Tracy Dundas started that 10 years ago. She's an amazing woman. And I started helping her. And then I just kept volunteering every year. And, I just saw the power of fashion to provide opportunities for creative young people like me who didn't know what to do with their life for a long time. And I'm in the South, and there's a lot of people who come from, no real money, no real support. Some of them can't go to college, and they're creatives. And what do you do with yourself, right? And they end up in these jobs where they're unhappy. There's no creativity. So I saw the film industry, it started with that, and then the fashion industry and these other things. And I was like, there are paths for women and people at POC to make six-figure incomes within 5 years if they go into these areas, right? And so I was like, So I came here and there was a huge gap in fashion, and I had already been doing that event over there helping her. So I was like, I'm just going to, I don't know why, I just felt inspired to do something here. So I did 3 years of it, and I launched a lot of people. You can check this market. I've launched so many models, makeup artists, designers from this market just with this little event because they just needed a platform. They were talented. They just needed a platform. So this year is really interesting. We're doing something totally different. I got a call from Dress for Success International. And the woman who's planning a lot of these events is from Chattanooga. And she's like, I see that you're doing the fashion thing in the industry in the area. And I want to do our gala in Chattanooga. We're launching a whole chapter and everything. And she's like, well, you run the show. So I'm running the show for that. So that's what I'm doing right now is putting that fashion together. It's going to help women who are in between jobs, and it helps them get clothes and like all the things. So it's going to be really fun. So we're doing that gala in October. So that was just something, another tool. One, it's inspired me creatively. I just went to the Frisk Museum. They have an exhibit, fashion exhibit right now. And looking at it, I realized how much fashion has changed my storytelling skills. And, fashion is an aesthetic medium. It's a storytelling medium, and people don't realize how much of that is in it. And I didn't either. So I started getting serious about it. And then the last few years, I started to really pay attention in my way and look at it and analyze it. What does it make me feel? Why does it make me feel that way? And looking at some of the greats. And I don't know, it's another artistic medium, and it's the most accessible medium. We make choices every morning that affect our mood and our power in the world and how we feel, right? I mean, I put on this shirt today. Why? Because something happened on the way here and I needed to cheer myself up. I instinctually picked something that made me feel good and happy and safe and feminine and joyful, right? So I think fashion is such an accessible art form. We all do it every day. We just don't necessarily pay attention. So I think paying attention is a good thing because it's not about money. I pretty much buy everything secondhand or from handmade artists. I don't buy commercially, period, anymore. And so, you can support an artist, you can recycle, reuse, redo, and that's fun. It's an art form that everyone can touch, even if you don't have a lot of money.
Yes, and you're wearing my favorite flower too. So.
I love sunflowers. I know, I just bought some.
Well, now we're going to pivot. We're going to talk about you being a consulting producer on the Restoring Balance Autism Recovery documentary. And as I said before, I have several clients who are on the spectrum. And so that holds a very, very dear place in my heart. Tell me what drew you to this project and what impact do you hope that it has for the conversation about autism?
Well, that's one of the things that, you and I share, and we have a heart for young people and people on the spectrum. I just think that, I've always had a heart for anybody that needed advocacy or an alliance. And I couldn't stand bullying from even the time I was a little girl. I was always in the middle, just trying to help people or befriending people. My friends were all the strange ones. Like I was one of them. And I was like, we were comfortable together. Let's be together. And I think our society tends to make people we try to make people fit into a mold. And so I'm always drawn to those that don't. And when I got approached about this documentary, what intrigued me about it was that they were approaching autism research and recovery from a different angle. They believe that it's through research that it's being caused by a combination of factors. Autism it's not one thing. It's not a genetic thing. It's not. It's other factors that are contributing to create a person who has symptoms which range, and that's why it's called spectrum, right? So what intrigued me about it was the hearts of the people behind it. And then also the fact that they were chronicling families and what they were doing to get better. And they saw amazing improvements and in the quality of life for the young people and the activation of their life. And something I'm passionate about is them finding ways to get jobs and work and finding the ability to hold relationships or to maybe live on their own and like having more power in their life, right? So that intrigued me. And so I just came on and helped with a lot of different things on that documentary. But also the biggest thing is Ryan has started a community, an online community that helps parents. It gives them a place to talk, share ideas, share resources. And I thought that was important. And Ryan's been studying autism for many years. He's a lovely human with a big old heart. And I just wanted to try to help. And it merged my two loves, which is film. I hadn't done that much documentary at the time, but it merged my loves of autism growth and recovery and film. So
I love that. And, I am very interested in the nutritional things that you can do to help improve symptoms of autism. And I'm curious if the documentary goes into that at all.
Absolutely. It's all about that because they're realizing that it's a lot of times it's what the child was born with. They may be born with diseases that haven't been diagnosed. They've found children with all kinds of things, Lyme disease, with things they've never been exposed to, but they already had them from the mother. And so it's a combination of sicknesses or illnesses, and then putting toxicity into the body, which happens naturally because it's in everything. So diet, supplementation, supporting the gut, all those things are huge, huge levers in protecting and healing the system.
If we can impart one little tidbit of knowledge, processed food in particular is one of the greatest contributors to
you have to watch a documentary. It's all about that. They show what happens when they cut out these foods and they cleanse the body using gut healing products and then diagnose some of the things that are going on and supplement to support that. Huge improvements. Nonverbals becoming verbals, barely functioning, becoming high functioning. It's incredible what can happen with changes. And that's why the community's there to share their stories and to share these things because this knowledge is not right in front of us. And so they're trying to get the word out there and help each other who are trying to, because it's not easy. It's not easy to make those changes when you have a young person on the spectrum who's used to those Cheez-Its and they get addicted to those foods and that's the only thing they'll eat. And like, it's really tough on these parents. So, but having the support of a community, having knowledge and then the, access to tools is really good and really important.
Yeah. That's a big part of my work with my my clients on the spectrum is really getting them, to assess for themselves or have their parents help them assess their functioning if they do try to adopt some more natural changes to their diet and seeing lots of great results when you do eliminate or at least greatly reduce highly processed foods, especially, but really kind of just getting close to the ground. Everybody can benefit from a diet that's, close to the ground and least processed as possible, because that's what our body's designed to, function its best on. And it's very apparent with children on the spectrum.
And I would second that for grief recovery, even with my journey and trauma recovery. It's like we don't understand how much and I know you're the expert on this, but how we mask feelings or we, don't deal with the true feelings because we're masking it with alcohol, with overeating, with eating junk food. And so that's part of the process. I can't wait for your book, by the way. I'm so excited. I want to read it and then I'm going to give it to my mom because that book. I know. I'm so excited because we need tools. Everybody needs tools and you're giving them to us. And that makes me so happy to have something to give to people, like put it in their hand because we need to reprogram ourselves and running from our feelings does not work and masking it with toxicity doesn't work either.
I think one of the most important things we can do is just really, and I think what you've actually done inherently, just naturally, is that you've really tapped into yourself, your intuition, and like your higher spirit, essentially, to help guide you. And that's one of the biggest themes of my book is that we can all do so much better if we listen to ourselves first and foremost and give ourselves permission to give ourselves what we need in the moment. So You're
That is
also doing this
literally
with your work.
you've literally just summed up the crux of my work. Because if you look at everything I'm talking about, what I'm doing is trying to help children and adults learn what I did not learn: boundaries, self-care, and your
Yes.
own intuition. And a
Yes.
lot of people don't know how to listen to their intuition, and that is something I'm digging into with the children's work. Is how do you hear yourself? How do you care for yourself? And how do you set boundaries? Because if I'd have had those things, a lot of the things that happened to me would not have happened.
Yep.
And no one was equipped around me to teach me that before the trauma or
Nope.
after. So it took
No.
me until, much later in life. But now I know, and I'm spreading the word as much as I can in as many ways as I can. If you look at a lot of my work, it's laced, because again, I want to support the work that you guys are doing. Not everybody can afford a therapist, and you guys can only take so many people. So I want to make sure that if we're getting access to therapy, that we are utilizing it, and that we are doing the tools and doing the work at home so we can improve and then help our families and help our friends also improve. Trauma is a part of life. Grief is a part of life. That's the thing. I think in America, for some reason, we think we're going to have this perfect life, and then we don't have it. We all go into depression and we fall apart. Guess what? Life is hard. Somebody should just tell you that straight up. And look, the old people will tell you. My grandmother used to tell me, life is hard, baby. But she did not tell me how to manage it.
Mhm.
What she taught me was to bull my way through it, which I
Yes.
tried to do, and it almost killed me. Because that does not involve self-care. That does not involve appropriate boundaries and communication. And that does not involve the things that actually prevent and or help you. But that's all she knew, right? You be
Mhm.
tough. You be tough. That's what I got in the South. You be tough like the boys and you'll survive. It almost killed me. So no,
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
That's
So
why I love that you're trying to get this information to the kids, because that's really who needs it,
and I figure if I can get the kids to listen to it, mom's sitting right there. So everything I do, I try to make it witty. I try to make it not annoying like some kid stuff. I try to put innuendos and things in there for the parents, and like things that like I think parents will relate to. In fact, I was on another podcast last year and he called me after. He said, I don't know why you call these children's stories, because I listen to your stories at night every night. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yes. He's like, I listen to your bedtime stories. But he had trauma,
Right.
really serious trauma, and his partner was working at night and he was alone. He said, when I get afraid, I turn on your stories because your voice is soothing and what you're teaching is so good. And I said, it inspired me. So then I started a new series called Bedtime Stories for Big Boys and Girls.
I love
And
it.
now I have three, at least three, that were inspired by men that I've had encounters with who have gone through trauma, and I address their trauma in particular in the stories and their challenges. And I'm writing
That's
more.
wonderful.
So yeah, we're doing stories for big boys and girls as well.
I'd love to know how people can find these stories and how if they want to work with you, how they can work with you.
Yeah. So the best thing people can do is just access our work and then support it and tell other people about it. If you go to mycalmworld.com, you can find links to a lot of things. We have a YouTube channel as well. And, we've got a certain amount of product out there, but there's a lot more coming. That's all I'm gonna say. There's a lot more really great stuff coming because we've gotten better at what we do. And also our songs and stories are pretty much on any streaming outlet. So, and we have a range of music, but then also the children's stories and things, everything that's out is pretty much out on, you can ask Siri, Alexa, you can go to, Spotify, all the things, it's out there.
Yes.
But the YouTube channel and the website are good gathering grounds for the gist of who we are and seeing more about the story and even the young people that work for us, because every time you listen to something, you support us and supports them. My goal is to keep these people working. We have 6 young people on the spectrum, 2 of which are female, who are working for us full time right now. For that to continue, we have to get audience. They're on grant right now. That's going to change. And I want these young people to be really good. And the new work that's coming out is incredible. We want them to keep working. And all people need to do is listen. And it's free. It's on whatever app you listen to. It's on YouTube. I mean, that's it. It's super simple to
So
support.
valuable. We will
Yeah.
definitely link all of those things in
Awesome.
podcast description. And we really highly recommend that you check her out, because the work that she's doing, I think, is transformative, not just for kids on the spectrum, but for everyone.
Anybody.
And
Yeah.
we really do need to support our own mental well-being in whatever ways we can. And this is a free way to do it, you guys. So definitely check out all of those links that we'll have in the podcast description. But sadly, for now, we are out of time for this half of this amazing episode.
Thank you so much for being with us, Shanna. And thank you all for tuning in and listening to ANEW Body Insight podcast. We look forward to our next exciting interview. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Body Insight podcast. Please remember, the content shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Body Insight podcast tab. Follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.